Makes no sense, but these are critical times and we must do something. He paused as if the unaccustomed public speech had tired him. He took a deep breath. The gold which Odious introduced seems to be the destructive potion. It should be gathered up and thrown away, said a thin, middle-aged woman, almost in tears. That would only make the dissension greater, said the blacksmith. As has been written, to blow on a spark could engulf the forest with fire. The crowd grew quiet again, and the miner continued. What if there were an abundance of gold, vast wagon loads of it? Is that possible, said the elder. What if it were? The elder smiled for the first time in months. It might prove interesting. If you think an abundance of gold might cure the madness, I would like to meet with you in a private session at a later time, and presently request that not one word of this meeting's content escape the church. Sounds so familiar. So familiar. Your wishes are granted, said the elder. Not one of us will speak of what has transpired here, and I will meet with you immediately after we sing together. For the first time in many weeks, exuberant song filled the rafters, and a fragile peace seemed to settle on the gathering. The following morning, the miner and his eldest son set out for the Red Mountain, as was their custom, and refused Odious permission to accompany them. He was outraged. You cannot deny me permission. I am the richest man in all of Harmony. It is not true. You only have the most gold and the most abundant possessions, but the ant is surfeited with a crust of bread. Today my son and I want to be alone. I can travel by myself, said Odious haughtily. And you can be swallowed by the spring waters which have crested to their peak. Odious knew the miner was right and angrily galloped off. The miner and his eldest son took the accustomed route to the Red Mountain, then rode westward for almost a mile. Near the mouth of the Singing River, they stopped when they approached an ancient eruption of dark, rusted quartz on a long, narrow ridge. It was on the bank below the ridge that Odious had found his tiny nuggets and the flakes of gold. The miner motioned to his son to bring the picks, and he himself gathered up 2 large metal scuttles grown dark with the dust of iron ore and coal. They walked upstream to a familiar sandbar and waded chest deep in turbulent water across the Singing River. Then they climbed to the top of the ridge, and the miner began tapping with his pick. Is there gold here, father? Yes. When I was a boy of your age, the blacksmith and I were digging here in search of coral deposits and found an entire rock of gold. Although it was beautiful, it had no value to us at the time, and we returned to Harmony only with our coal. A week or so ago, we remembered our discovery and suddenly realized what it was. He began chipping more vigorously with his pick and dislodged several pieces of quartz heavily laden with gold. He continued to attack the quartz until a large rock fell aside and there was a massive vein of the purest gold. It was the mother lode. The boy gasped. There must be wagon loads of gold. Yes, said the miner. Go back to the wagon, careful to cross at the sandbar. Otherwise the swollen river will devour you. Take the rope and tie one end to the oak tree nearest the wagon, then tie a piece of metal to the other end and hurl it across the stream to me. The boy did as he was told, and soon the miner carefully guided scuttles full of gold across the Singing River to his son. The boy untied the rope and sent the empty scuttles back to the miner to again be filled with chunks of gold. A few hours after lunch, he called to his father. There is no more room in the wagon. The miner again carefully crossed the river, and together they took the wagon load of gold back to Harmony. Early in the morning, the miner and the blacksmith brought the wagon filled with gold to the cobblestone courtyard in front of the blacksmith's shop. There they waited impatiently for the village to wake from sleep. Soon there were wisps of smoke rising from chimneys as the housewives prepared breakfast and the children stumbled out to feed the livestock. A half hour later, the streets began to fill up with people. The cobbler walked by on his way to work. Once a friendly man, he now barely nodded as he paused. Suddenly, almost as an afterthought, he glanced at the wagon gleaming in the morning sunlight. What in the world, he gasped. Is that all gold? He could barely get out the words. Indeed, said the miner. Would you like some? You're joking. The miner never changed his expression and handed him 2 10-pound nuggets. I can't believe it. He grasped the gold like a starving man clutches a loaf of bread and went staggering off down the street. Come back for more, said the blacksmith. There's plenty for everyone. Soon a crowd had gathered, the miller and the mayor, the tanner and the woodsman, their wives and children as well, all shoving and screaming for the gold. By the time Odious heard of the miracle and saw huge nuggets of gold moving through the streets in every direction, there was hardly any left. The people who normally stepped aside as he rode by now ignored him. When the cobbler's wife shouted at him, "Now we're richer than you are, Odious," he jumped from his horse and fought his way through the mob. Unfortunately, there were only a few small nuggets remaining in the bottom of the wagon, and Odious was on his hands and knees fighting with the healer's wife and children for his share of the gold. "There will be more tomorrow," said the miner, and there was, another wagon load. Many of the people had stayed up all night and waited at the blacksmith's courtyard. Wow. Very familiar. Familiar. By the time the sun rose and the wagon reappeared, an angry, feverish mob had already assembled. The miner and the blacksmith began handing out nuggets to every hand that clawed pleadingly at the air. Clothes were ripped, hats trampled, and the tanner's wife was knocked unconscious when a large nugget fell on her head. "Calm down," said the miner. "There's enough for everyone." But his words were to no avail. The roar of the crowd continued, with Odious fighting frantically for the largest nugget until finally the last pennyweight was gone, and people made their way home to assess what they had captured. Odious was furious. 100 people in Harmony were now wealthier than he was. He fumed half the night and then made his way to the crowd that had assembled in darkness. They jeered at him. "We'll build a house twice the size of yours, Odious, and have 100 more cattle, and rings of solid gold for every finger." Odious said nothing and waited till the wagon reappeared. Then he fought his way to the front and grabbed 2 of the largest chunks of gold. As he forced his way back through the crowd, someone tripped him, and in an instant someone else had run away with all his gold. When he fought his way to the front again, only the same small particles as before remained. He greedily gathered up what he could and disappeared, never noticing the sad eyes of the blacksmith's daughter, Raven, who remembered the Odious who had first made her the ring of gold. As soon as he returned to his home, Odious decided to follow the miner's wagon from afar and learn the source of the mother lode. Then he could fill his own saddlebags with as much gold as they could carry. He packed a few pieces of bread and a miner's pick and was off at an excited gallop. In the distance, he saw the wagon as it wound its way through the hills. He watched the miner and his son turn off the road that led to the mouth of the Singing River and saw them cross at the sandbar and climb to the high ridge where the mother lode gleamed brighter than any star he had ever seen. When the wagon was filled in mid-afternoon and the miner and his son departed, Odious made his way down a hill to the edge of the river at the sandbar. Gently he encouraged his horse into the stream and across the water. On the opposite bank, the horse slipped on a rock and almost fell back into the tumultuous water. Then Odious was safe on the opposite shore and cautiously made his way to the top of the ridge. He approached the deep crevice of gold, now almost a cave, as a pilgrim approaches an ancient shrine. Then with a shout of triumphant joy, he began hacking away at the gold. Soon he had filled the large saddlebags with giant nuggets of gold until they could hold no more. With great effort, he tied the bags on his horse and climbed on. The horse could hardly move, and Odious knew that the beast could never make it across the hissing water. He climbed off and led the horse to the edge of the bank near the sandbar. Then Odious stepped into the water, which was almost up to his shoulders, planted his feet cautiously, and led the horse down into the stream. It resisted, but finally, under Odious's strong urging, it stepped into the water. Slowly, almost reverently, Odious led the struggling animal across, careful to plant his own foot as he made each step in the raging current. As he neared the bank, he began laughing almost hysterically. There was more gold in his saddlebags than anyone in Harmony possessed. Once again, he would be the richest and most envied man in the village. Giddily, he began climbing up the bank until he reached the top and let out an exhilarating scream of joy. Startled, the horse lurched dangerously. There's him with his gold. And slid back awkwardly into the river. Odious clung desperately to the reins and tried to pull the animal up the bank. Again, the horse panicked and almost fell to its left side. Horror-stricken, Odious watched the chunks of gold slide from the saddlebag into the stream. As the horse tried to steady itself, it tottered to its right, and again the gold began to slide from its leather cache. Odious let go of the reins and lunged for the gold. He grabbed one giant nugget of approximately 30 pounds and fell with it into the stream. The horse, finally rid of the burden of gold, thrashed and fought its way up the bank, while Odious, still clutching the nugget, was washed down the Singing River and drowned in its depths with his gold. Woohoo! Later that night, the horse returned to Harmony with the saddlebag still strapped on and a few particles of gold at the bottom. It was obvious to the whole village what had happened. Only the elders and the blacksmith's family felt any real grief. Only Raven shed tears. In the morning, the wagon again appeared loaded with gold. The rumor of Odious' disappearance and probable death now had circulated throughout the village, but had little impact on the unruly mob that fought for their ration of gold with the same shrill screams and passionate hunger, the same shoving and mauling that ignored the daffodils already blooming on the bank of the singing river. Only a few, like the blacksmith's family, rejoiced in the fresh smells of spring's new life and the busy swallows rushing frantically to build their nests under the eaves of the colorful houses of Harmony. After the last scrap of gold had been scraped from the wagon, the miner and his son again set out to extract the precious metal from the mother lode. It was during lunch that they discovered the body of Odious rolling against a fallen log 100 yards downstream from the sandbar crossing, his rigid arms frozen around the massive nugget. They lifted his body and carried it to the wagon. It was on that same afternoon that a strange paralysis took possession of Harmony. The tanner went to the miller for fine flour and offered him a tiny nugget of gold, which once would have purchased a half-year's worth of flour. "I have no need of gold," said the miller. "Half our wood box is full of it. I need leather for my children's shoes and wood for my wife's stove." The tanner was amazed. "But I have no leather or wood, only gold." It was the same everywhere. Suddenly gold was superfluous, and the whole village was in an uproar. The butcher had a little meat, but no flour or shoes, and the cobbler had a few pairs of sandals, but no wood or meat. "What good is our gold?" the people asked angrily. The elders smiled. What good indeed? When the wagon returned in the late afternoon and drove past the church, the whole village seemed to be gathered in the square. "We have no need of your gold," they shouted. "Bring us coal and iron. Our homes are cold and our wagons are in disrepair. Our children go hungry and even our horses are wasted and thin." When the crowd noticed the body of Odysseus, there was a moment of stunned silence, then a scream of rage. "He is the source of our trouble. Throw his body into the singing river and let the fishes feast on his evil remains." As they rushed to the wagon to destroy the corpse of Odious, the most revered of the elders held them back with an upraised arm. "Assemble in the church," he said, "and ring the bells that everyone may come." For the first time in weeks, the pews were filled with people, frantic and angry. The elder addressed them. "Do you have enough gold?" he asked. "Yes," they shouted in unison. "Gold is evil, and the source of our destruction it is a curse." "No," said the elder. "Gold is beautiful, fired in the depths of the earth and cast upon the land for our enjoyment. It is God's creation, but we have made of it a desecration. If it were necessary for our life and happiness, it would be as abundant as the water and the wheat, as available as the sky and the sun, which warms our hearts and gives life to the earth, as beautiful as the gold is. It is nothing compared to a child's wondering eyes, or the gentle, patient eyes of a cat or dog. "Take our gold," the crowd shouted. "We no longer have need of it. It buys nothing. Only the labor of our hands can bring life to our families. Odious has almost destroyed us." No, Odious has not done anything save expose the greed and hatred that can infect the human heart. He has done us a favor. "What favor has he done?" the cobbler shouted angrily. "He has tested us and we failed. Why did we not give him the finest house without his asking? The largest flock, the most ornate possessions? Then he would have learned from us that love and honest labor are the source of human joy, and too many possessions are a burden that empties the heart and dries the spirit." He paused. Odious did not harm us. We failed him. His death is as much ours as it is his own. Tomorrow we will bury his body with dignity and sing our sadness to the heavens in his honor. "But what of the gold?" the mayor asked. "We must destroy it." "It cannot be destroyed," said the elder. "It is part of the earth. We will gather it all together and make a giant monument in the square to mark our own madness. Each family shall have a single drinking cup made of solid gold, and once a year we shall all drink water from that cup. We shall recite the ancient proverb. It is not the beauty of the cup that matters, but the purity of its water, not the comeliness of a face, but the purity of its spirit. We have only learned what we already know. Now we must ask forgiveness of God and one another. But what if Odious is home? Should we tear it down stone by stone? Asked the mayor. No, said the elder. We shall leave it as a place for the next stranger who arrives in our midst. We shall not force our way on him. He must learn it all by himself. Even as the fledgling swallow must fall from the nest before he flies, and the wolf cub must know the mouse from the poisonous adder. Then the people of the whole village sang their traditional songs to the darkening skies and the crests of the Explorer Mountains, to the tall shimmering pines, and in harmony with the roar of the singing river that made its way westward in the endless circle of life. I loved Odious, said Raven to her father on the way home. I know, he said, but not all loves are possible. Some will destroy us. A true love will open our heart and give life to our whole being. It is from such love that you were born. Odious was not as fortunate as you. I will keep his ring, she said. As long as you like. It was perhaps his finest moment of love. Perhaps I did not love him enough. No, the blacksmith said softly. Love takes a long time. It is a gentle force like the river, making smooth the rough edges of rocks, or like the moss growing on the trunks of oaks. Love cannot invade like an avalanche in the mountains, or the north wind which topples the cypress. He paused thoughtfully. Love is a rare gift, like the gold that lurks quietly in quartz, or the secret spring that bubbles from the depths of the earth. It is hard to love someone who does not share your deepest hopes and most secret dreams. Perhaps it is impossible. Even when love comes, it must be cherished, or it will wither and die. If I truly want love, will I finally find it? She asked. I think so, he answered hesitantly, but you must find someone who thinks you're beautiful as you are, even as I do. The gopher does not envy the mink's fur, nor does the rabbit regret that he does not fly like the dove. How will I know when I find such love? You will smell the lilacs and taste the sweetness of the air. You will notice the changes in the trees and hear the song of birds. You will embrace the snow and listen to the melody of the river. You will laugh from your legs and cry from your loins and embrace each new day as a gift that will never come again. Most of all, you will greet the sun each morning with reverence and feel the joy and sadness of the sunset. And you will never lose the special beauty that is you. No one can ask that, nor will love permit it. This above all. The following Sunday in mid-April, as the people gathered in the church, there was again the evidence of tranquility that had forever characterized life in harmony. Parents had again taken charge in their homes, and husbands and wives and children seemed content with their work. The miller was again delighted to make the finest flour, and exchange with the cobbler and tailor for the best of their own craft. Song rang out more loudly than before, and the most revered of the elders rose to recite the ancient story of the planting celebration. Once a man was thirsting at the bottom of a high hill. His eyes saw the deer gathering at the brow of the hill to drink, and his ears heard the splashing of water. At the bidding of his eyes and ears, the man began to climb, but his feet objected. Why must we obey the ears and eyes and work so hard? The knees do nothing. So he began to walk on his knees. Soon the knees complained. What of the hands? Immediately he began walking on his hands. But the hands pointed out the futility of the climb, since only the mouth wanted water. Finally the man collapsed and died on the hill. We all of us are that man, and each part depends on the whole. No one is greater or less. No one is sufficient to himself. Thus says our ancient wisdom. Then the church was filled with song that echoed beyond the Explorer Mountains until the whole village gathered in the public square to share bread and fruit, to celebrate once more the end of winter and the joy of spring, and to watch the singing river flow relentlessly toward the sea in an unending circle of life. It is the end.